Hi guys, Glader here. So today there seems to be some news for World of Warcraft Classic. Blizzard has been working on their own vanilla classic World of Warcraft experience, and I have not yet read this news, so I'm going to read it right now on video for the first time, so that you can go ahead and listen to it, so that you don't have to read it yourself. Greetings! Development of World of Warcraft Classic is underway, and we're very excited to share some of the challenges and solutions we are working on. As we mentioned last BlizzCon, the process of restoring the classic game is not straightforward. It's important to us to take the time and effort to get it right. This includes poring over numerous game versions, data, and code, meticulously scrutinizing all of the changes we've made over the years. Rest assured, the WoW Classic team is hard at work making it a reality, and we're at a point in development where we're ready to share some of the things we've been working on. Alright, sounds like this is going to be interesting. WoW Classic first prototype. The first, and among the most important, decision we had to make was which version of the game to focus on. As many of you have noted, the Classic period was 2 years long and full of changes. Core features like Battlegrounds were introduced in patches after World of Warcraft's original launch, and class designs similarly changed over time. After careful consideration, we have decided on patch 1.12. Well, that's slightly different than what current vanilla servers do, which is they're on patch 1.12.1. Maybe they just didn't feel like putting that point 1 there. I don't know what changed. But there's point 1 and point 3, I think. I don't know the differences there, so that's interesting. But they've decided on patch 1.12, Drums of War, as our foundation, because it represents the most complete version of the classic experience. Once we had our starting point, we began taking stock of what we had in the source code and what we could make available, which included restoring the original development database from archival backups. After stitching various key pieces together, we had a locally rebuilt version of patch 1.12 running internally. Oh my god, that's incredible news. The team could create characters and do basic quests and leveling, and dying, which we did many times, for testing purposes, obviously. Our initial runs exposed a few expected issues. The game sometimes crashed, didn't recognize our modern video cards, and was incompatible with our current login system. You know, I know that as a fact. It's very true. I mean, they completely changed the login protocol. Even in Cataclysm, I believe it was different. That first pass also couldn't support any of our modern security and anti-cheating capabilities. Clearly, we had a lot of work to do to make WoW Classic live up to the Blizzard standard of quality and deliver the experience players want. Oh, there's even more news. The path forward, second prototype. They've already made 2 prototypes. That's pretty quick considering World of Warcraft originally was developed for years. It cost $32 million to develop the original World of Warcraft. And I know they have backups of the older version of the game, but it's pretty crazy that they have a second prototype already. Maybe not much change. Let's read. Speaking of engineering, World of Warcraft is a very data-driven game, which means the basic code is flexible and specific, and the specific way it behaves is controlled by information contained in databases. You know, I also happen to have become familiar with that the past few days. Everything is defined in these DBC files, which are in the client MPQs. Quite interesting. I've been trying to create some custom content, and what's said here is absolutely true. They're not lying. A lot of the game is data-driven. Relational data-driven, to be specific. Things like quests, monsters, items, and the rules for how all of these interact are defined by the designers and the artists and data. Again, very true. So we asked ourselves, would it still be possible to deliver an authentic classic experience if we took our modern code, this is what I thought they were going to do originally, with all of its backend improvements and changes, and used it to process the patch 1.12 game data? I thought they were going to do this. I was hoping, actually, they were going to do this. While that may seem counterintuitive, this would inherently include classic systems like skill ranks, old quests, terrain, talents, and so on, while later features like transmog and achievements would effectively not exist because they were entirely absent from the data. After weeks of research and development, experimentation, and prototyping, we were confident we could deliver the classic WoW content and gameplay without sacrificing the literally millions of hours put into our back-end development over the past 13 years. This is exactly where I thought they were going. There's no reason to develop 2 MMO backends and maintain them for years. It's going to cost millions of dollars to do that, and they lose millions and millions of man-hours by reverting back to this older version. So I expected this. As a developer, I expected this. While our initial effort helped us determine the experience we wanted to provide, this second prototype really defined how we'd get there. Starting from a modern architecture, with all its security and stability changes, meaning the team's effort can be focused on pursuing an authentic classic experience. Any differences in behavior between our development builds and patch 1.12 reference can be systematically cataloged and corrected, while still operating from a foundation that's stable and secure. I expected this. There's more. Digging in. So what does it take to recreate an authentic classic experience with modern engineering? Let's start by categorizing the different types of game data that make up WoW. Table data. This kind of information is almost always represented as numbers, how many hit points a creature has, the amount of strength an item grants, or where and when certain creatures spawn, are all examples of the numerical data we store in our databases. We can also store and enforce relationships between different pieces of data. Anyone who's, and this is me speaking here, anyone who's checked out, Trinity Core or done some client-side changes with DBC's custom MQ patches, you have already seen this. This is how the game is driven. Everything else is just systems that expect data to exist, and you can add stuff. Essentially, this is absolutely how World of Warcraft works, and I am quite surprised that they are discussing, this. I'm surprised they're mentioning this. This is quite more in depth than I expected. File data. This is very often dense data like 3D models, textures, animations, and terrain. Our user interface is built up from XML and Lua files. Many of the art files do not use the same file formats that commercial art tools spit out. Our build pipeline takes these raw art assets and translates them into something optimized for our game to read and process. And Lua scripts. Some features are driven by Lua scripts written by designers, allowing them to easily define custom behaviors for server-side logic without requiring deep engineering logic. Oh, so they do some Lua scripting on the back end. That's interesting. That's expected. We have a very large team. We want to be able to provide some sort of scripting language that isn't C, C++, or even C#. You want someone who doesn't really know how to program to be able to create content and features for your game. How engineering has changed. One challenge we face is that all the classic data is in the original format used at launch, but that format has changed substantially in the intervening years. Major work needs to be done in this area to make the modern client compatible with the classic data. For example, spells could originally only perform 3 actions on the spell's target. In table form, that looks something like this. I'm not going to read all this, but they show a basic way that they might represent a fireball or a frostball. It's able to deal damage, apply auras, add periodics, some sort of aura flags, like slow or periodic damage, and then some data fields. As you can see, there is a lot of space taken up by nothing. Over the course of WoW's lifetime, we've improved our data design and normalized much of our database data. Today, that same data would be separated out like this. This is how I would build it. Fireball, Frostbolt. Wow, so they have just a table for spell names. Interesting. Spell effects. Spell ID. Effect damage. Well, that's interesting. So define these all in separate tables for normalization purposes. Okay. And spell auras. Well, that's really good. You don't have all these empty fields. That's good. In this form, there is much less wasted space, and spells are no longer limited to 3 effects. But before we can load any database data, we need to transform the old data layout into the new one. This is not limited to spells, as almost every game system, including items, creatures, player characters, spawning, AI, and more, has had its data layout altered over the years. Alright, we're almost at the end. Looking ahead, all the work we're doing will ultimately allow us to create an authentic classic experience on a platform that is much more optimized and stable, helping us avoid latency and stability issues. Additional modern improvements will include modern anti-cheat and botting detection, customer service, and Battle.net integration, and similar conveniences that do not affect the core gameplay experience. We are looking forward to the challenges ahead and share your passion for the classic game. Every code check-in, data conversion we make brings classic WoW closer to providing that authentic experience you and we want. Thanks for joining us on this journey. Well, I didn't expect this. This is some great news. They've got a second prototype, and it looks like they know exactly what they have to do. Obviously, they're Blizzard, they know what they have to do. But this is great news, and hopefully we see some more soon. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll have the link in the description to this news post if you want to go check it out, and if you want to go post in the comments, because those are always great. Thanks for watching, guys.